The alien woman stepped off her ship, the gravel crunching under her boots in a way that felt oddly grounding after months of silent travel through star systems nobody in the core worlds bothered to name. Her ears twitched, those unmistakable long ears that marked her apart from the usual crowd on this dusty, far-flung planet. "Great," she muttered. "I come all this way, and the most exciting thing is the smell of roasted space rat." She adjusted her jacket with a faint smirk, aware she looked as out of place as a supernova at a candlelight vigil. Her blue eyes scanned the marketplace, a scatter of stalls manned by traders hawking everything from hydroponic algae snacks to questionable hollow entertainment licenses. She wasn't here for the local delicacies or shiny trinkets. She was here because of a hunch, a nagging whisper in her memory she couldn't quite place but refused to ignore. The name of the planet was unimportant. What mattered was the man she had glimpsed earlier. Human, oddly familiar, with eyes that stirred something she thought long dead. He was leaning against a stall, pretending to examine a piece of tech that was obviously broken. When he noticed her staring, he blinked like a character caught mid-hologram glitch. She walked toward him, careful not to spook him. This wasn't exactly a diplomatic mission, more like an awkward cosmic reunion. "Why are you looking at me like that, human?" she said, voice calm but tinged with a hint of humor. "Like I'm some kind of alien exhibit or a lost tourist from the Andromeda cluster?" The man grinned, a little sheepishly. "Well, you are kind of an alien. I mean, you don't see many people with ears that could pick up radio signals from halfway across the galaxy." He nodded toward her ears and she raised an eyebrow. "I'm just trying to figure out if you're here for a genuine first contact or if this is some elaborate cosplay event I didn't get invited to." She laughed, a sound rare and unexpected in her travels. "Cosplay? Please. I'm not dressed for any convention unless it's called Space Travelers Who Never Pack Properly." He chuckled and shook his head. "Fair enough. I'm Leo, by the way. I'm usually better with names, but you're a bit of a mystery wrapped in an interstellar riddle." "Interstellar riddle?" she smirked. "That sounds like a bad novel title. The mystery of the long-eared alien woman who won't tell you her name." Leo grinned. "I'd buy that. But seriously, why do I feel like I've seen you before? Or maybe it's the other way around." He glanced around nervously. "Are you some kind of secret agent? Because if you are, your cover is, well, let's just say it's not very subtle." She folded her arms. "If I am, I'm terrible at it. And if I'm not, then I'm just an alien woman with bad timing and a knack for landing in the wrong places." Their banter eased the tension, but beneath the jokes, a current of something more serious stirred. She studied him, those eyes again. Soft, steady, haunted in a way she recognized. "Tell me, Leo, have you ever felt like your past was a ghost that refused to stay buried?" He blinked, clearly caught off guard by the question. "That sounds like a line from a bad space soap opera. But yes, sometimes memories sneak up on me like space pirates with terrible timing." She chuckled. "Maybe that's what brought me here. Memories with lousy timing and even worse aim." Leo looked around conspiratorially. "So what's the real reason you're here? You don't just drop in on dusty planets for the ambiance." She hesitated, then said, "There's a story. About a promise, a rescue, and a boy with eyes just like yours. It's buried somewhere in the stars, but it feels like it's trying to find me." He smiled softly, the kind that made her heart skip despite years of cold space and colder solitude. "Sounds like you've got a mystery that needs solving. Lucky for you, I'm great at puzzles." She raised an eyebrow, amused. "You're not as ordinary as you look, are you?" "Ordinary is overrated," he said with a wink. "Besides, I have a feeling we're about to make some extraordinary memories." The sun dipped low, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch across time itself. Two strangers, bound by threads of a forgotten past, stood on the edge of something neither could yet understand. She could almost hear the universe holding its breath. And somewhere in the distance, a space rat scampered away, apparently unimpressed by the unfolding cosmic reunion. Leo scratched the back of his head, his grin growing wider despite the knot of confusion tightening in his chest. "Okay, so you say there's this rescue and a promise, and it somehow involves me? Sounds like the start of one heck of a space soap opera." She crossed her arms, her long ears flicking with a hint of impatience. Believe me, if I were making this up, I'd have added more explosions. But this isn't fiction, Leo. It's real, and somehow, you're at the center of it. He raised his hands in mock surrender. All right, let's say I believe you. Where do we start? Because I don't remember being rescued by an alien with pointy ears and a sharp wit. She smiled, the kind of smile that meant she was about to share something precious and dangerous all at once. You don't remember because it happened when you were a child, during the war that tore our worlds apart. I was sent on a rescue mission. Your parents were caught in the crossfire, and I took you away. Leo blinked. Wait. So you're telling me that an alien woman not only rescued me, but has been looking for me ever since? And I didn't even get a thank you card? She laughed, shaking her head. You were a kid, not exactly in a position to send thank you cards across galaxies. He smirked. Fair point, though I might have sent you a fruit basket by now. The alien woman chuckled, eyes sparkling. I'll put that on my wish list. They walked through the bustling streets, their conversation weaving between past and present, lightening the heaviness with jokes about interspecies misunderstandings and the absurdity of universal bureaucracy. Leo told her about his life, growing up on Earth, his fascination with old sci-fi movies, and his not-so-stellar attempts at learning alien languages. I can barely order a coffee without messing it up, he admitted. Imagine me trying to negotiate peace treaties. She smiled warmly. That's why I'm here, to make sure you don't accidentally start an intergalactic war over a latte. Their laughter mingled, creating a fragile bubble of normalcy amid the swirling chaos of the galaxy. Yet beneath the humor, the alien woman felt the weight of time pressing down on them both. She spoke of the war, the battles fought not just with weapons, but with ideals, and how she had been part of a resistance trying to save what little hope remained. Leo's expression darkened briefly. I remember the news reports, the disappearances, the stories no one wanted to believe. You were part of that? Yes, she replied softly. I fought to protect the innocent, even when the odds were stacked against us. When I found you, I made a promise to keep you safe, but the war tore us apart, and I thought I had lost you. He looked at her, eyes wide. And now you find me here years later, and you want to pick up where you left off? She nodded. I don't expect you to understand everything right away, but I need your help. There are forces still at work, ones that don't want our story told. Leo laughed, a dry, slightly ironic sound. Of course there are. There's always some cosmic villain lurking in the shadows. She grinned. Welcome to the universe. Their banter eased the tension, but it was clear their reunion was just the beginning. They had much to unravel, secrets to uncover, and a future to fight for, together. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city, they stood side by side, ready to face whatever came next with a mix of courage, humor, and a promise that neither time nor war could break. Okay, so you're telling me, Leo said, rubbing his chin as if the universe itself had just dumped a particularly confusing riddle in his lap, that not only am I the long-lost star of some aliens war saga, but now I'm supposed to help fight intergalactic bad guys? I thought my biggest battle was trying to get my toaster to work this morning. The alien woman gave a smirk, ears twitching in amusement. Turns out the toaster's just a warm-up exercise. You'll get used to lasers and secret codes soon enough. Leo shook his head, still trying to wrap his mind around everything. So, what exactly do I do? Do I wear a cape, learn some fancy alien martial arts, or maybe just stand there looking confused and handsome? She laughed. The last one might come naturally, but seriously, there's more to this than meets the eye. Remember those encrypted messages I mentioned? They're not just random signals. They're warnings. Warnings about what? Space pirates? Rogue AI? A galactic bake-off gone wrong? Leo joked. Close, she said with a smile. But no bake-offs. There's a faction, call them the Shadow Collective, who want to erase certain histories, including ours. They believe some memories are dangerous. Leo's eyebrows knit together. Erase memories? That sounds like a bad sci-fi plot, but here we are. Unfortunately, it's real. They have tech that can wipe memories, Alter identities? They're trying to rewrite the past to control the future. Great, Leo said. So we're fighting against the universe's worst librarians, erasing books, rewriting stories? How do we stop them? The alien woman's gaze hardened. We need to find the original data cores, archives hidden in abandoned space stations scattered across forgotten star systems. They contain records of who we were, who we are. Leo's eyes lit up with the thrill of adventure. Sounds like a treasure hunt in space. Do I get a map, a team, maybe a cool spaceship with neon lights? She grinned. I thought you'd never ask. The ship is a relic, but it flies. And as for the team, you're about to meet some interesting characters. Leo rubbed his hands together. All right, let's do this. But fair warning, I'm better at making bad jokes than flying starships. You're going to fit right in, she said, her tone light but eyes sharp. As they prepared to leave the bustling city behind, Leo glanced back and said, by the way, if we encounter any space pirates, remind me to negotiate with snacks instead of weapons. I'm terrible at the whole intimidate thing. She laughed, the sound echoing in the corridor. Noted. Snacks it is. Together they boarded the ship, the engines humming to life as stars stretched into lines outside the windows. Their mission was clear, their bond fragile but growing stronger. Somewhere among the stars lay the keys to their past, and perhaps the future of countless worlds. And despite the looming danger, they faced it with a mixture of courage, curiosity, and enough humor to keep the universe guessing. The ship's engines hummed like a restless giant waking from a long nap, filling the cockpit with a gentle vibration that seemed to seep into Leo's bones. He glanced over at the alien woman, who was tapping at the console with the kind of focused precision that made him think she had done this a million times before. So, he started, any chance this thing has a please don't crash button? Because I'm already regretting signing up for this adventure. She smiled without looking up. There's no such button, but I do have an emergency eject. It's mostly for when I get tired of your jokes. Great, Leo said, raising his hands in surrender. Just when I thought I'd earned a little sympathy. Their destination was an old space station, once a thriving hub during the war, now abandoned and drifting in the shadow of a dying star. The alien woman explained that the station held one of the data cores they needed to find, a vault of memories that the Shadow Collective desperately wanted to erase. It's like a library in zero gravity, she joked, but instead of books, it's filled with secrets and ghosts. Leo laughed. Zero gravity sounds fun until you try to pour coffee or eat a sandwich without it floating away. Trust me, I've seen worse. Floating sandwiches are a plague across the galaxy. As they approached the station, the ship's sensors picked up faint signals. Old tech, but still alive, stubbornly broadcasting a welcome or a warning. Either way, Leo said, I'm guessing we're not invited. The airlock hissed open with a slow groan, and they stepped inside, the silence thick with memories. The alien woman led the way, her steps sure despite the eerie emptiness. This place used to be bustling, she said quietly. Now it's just a ghost waiting for a story to bring it back to life. Leo peeked around a corner. Ghosts, huh? Maybe it's just space dust playing tricks, she smirked. Or the collective's last defense mechanism. They don't want us here. As they delved deeper, the station's systems flickered, lights blinking, holographic screens sputtering to life. Leo reached out, swiping through the flickering images. Looks like someone forgot to pay the space station's electricity bill. Or it's a trap, she said, eyes narrowing. Suddenly, an alarm blared, red lights flooding the corridor. Well, that escalated quickly, Leo said, ducking behind a console. They raced through twisting halls, dodging automated defenses left over from the war, lasers zipping past, doors sealing shut just in time to block their escape. The alien woman hacked into the station's mainframe with practiced ease, the glow of the console reflecting in her eyes. Almost there, she muttered. Leo grinned despite the chaos. You're like a cosmic locksmith. She rolled her eyes. Flatter me later. We have to get to the data core before it shuts down. They reached the vault, a spherical chamber pulsing with light and energy. The alien woman activated the interface, the core revealing holographic images, memories, histories, voices from the past. Among them, Leo caught a glimpse of a small boy, wide-eyed and scared, and a promise whispered in a language older than the stars. "It's you," she said softly, turning to him. "All of it. Your past. Our promise." Leo swallowed, the weight of it settling in. So the story wasn't just a story after all. "No," she said firmly. "It's our history, and now it's our fight." As the station began to power down, they grabbed what they could. Data chips, recordings, anything to keep the past alive. Leo looked at the alien woman, a new determination in his eyes. "Ready to make some noise?" She smiled, ears twitching. "Let's show the Shadow Collective that some stories refuse to be erased." With the data core secured and their spirits high, they raced back to the ship, the station fading into darkness behind them. Outside, the dying star cast long shadows, but inside, hope burned brighter than ever. Leo sat in the cockpit, hands hovering over the controls as the stars stretched out before them, like ribbons of light. The alien woman beside him glanced over, a playful spark in her eyes. "You know," she said, "after all this, I half expected you to be a natural pilot by now." He smirked. "I'm more of a fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy. And sometimes the pants don't cooperate." She laughed. "Good thing the galaxy doesn't demand perfect pilots. Just stubborn ones." Leo's mind drifted back over everything. The war, the lost years, the promises made and kept. He never imagined that a chance encounter would unravel a past he didn't know he had, or that his life would become entwined with hers in a battle far bigger than either of them. Yet here they were, with the stolen memories in hand, ready to face the Shadow Collective's final gambit. Suddenly, the ship's alert chimed. An incoming transmission. The alien woman tapped the screen. "It's them," the collective Leo groaned. "Can't we have a break? Maybe a cosmic vacation?" She grinned. "Where's the fun in that?" The hologram flickered to life, revealing a shadowy figure draped in shifting darkness. "You cannot stop progress. Erasing the past is evolution." Leo leaned forward, voice steady. "You're wrong. Erasing the past only erases who we are. Our memories, our stories, they're what make us human, or alien, or whatever the heck I am now." The figure sneered. "Then prepare to be forgotten." Before the transmission ended, the ship jolted. A trap. The collective's forces had closed in, their sleek warships surrounding them like a net. Leo looked at the alien woman. "Well, this is it. Any chance we have a plan that doesn't involve me accidentally pressing the self-destruct button?" She smiled, calm and confident. "We fight smart, not hard. The memories we save contain codes, blueprints, strategies. We're not just fighting for survival, we're fighting for a future where the truth lives." With deft fingers, she initiated a sequence, unleashing a dazzling array of holographic decoys that scrambled the enemy's sensors. Leo's grin widened. "Nice. So we're basically the galaxy's best magicians." As the battle unfolded, Leo found himself surprisingly calm, the weight of his newfound identity giving him purpose rather than fear. Together they piloted through the chaos, outwitting and outmaneuvering their foes. When the dust settled, the Shadow Collective retreated, their plans foiled. For now. Leo let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "So, what now? Do we kick back and binge-watch those old sci-fi shows you mentioned?" The alien woman chuckled. "Maybe. But for now, we make sure the stories stay alive. The data cores will be shared with worlds hungry for the truth." Leo nodded, feeling something shift inside him. A sense of belonging, of purpose. "You know, I never thought I'd be part of something this big. But I'm glad I am." She looked at him with warmth. "We all need a story worth fighting for. Looks like you found yours." As they charted a course toward new horizons, Leo realized that the boy who once floated alone through war-torn skies had grown into a man ready to face the universe. No longer just a lost child, but a guardian of memories, a keeper of promises, and above all, a friend. And maybe, just maybe, someone who could pilot a spaceship without causing a disaster. But that was a lesson for another day. The cold hum of the life support systems was the only company Jonas had for the 100th lonely night on this forgotten outpost. A speck in the vast dark sea of the galaxy, where the stars felt more like indifferent pinpricks than the blazing suns of old Earth tales. He lay sprawled across his bunk, trying to convince his stubborn brain that the buzzing overhead light was a conspiracy against his sleep, rather than a reminder of how far he was from home. It was the kind of place where even the cockroaches had probably signed up for a transfer out of boredom and existential dread. His eyes shut, but not before he muttered under his breath, "Great, another stellar night lost to cosmic insomnia." Then the silence broke, not with alarms, not with the usual clatter of boots on metal, but with a presence that somehow managed to feel both impossible and inevitable. The door to his small, claustrophobic room slid open with an almost reverent whisper, like it was afraid to disturb the universe itself. He blinked into the darkness, squinting against the dim glow cast by a distant star through the viewport. And there she was, the alien queen, draped in shadows that danced across her silhouette like liquid starlight, her form unsettlingly familiar, yet undeniably other. Her long ears caught the faintest glint of light, tracing delicate, improbable arcs that made Jonas blink again, wondering if space had finally scrambled his brain. She knelt beside his bunk, the motion fluid and commanding, yet somehow laced with a strange grace that suggested she'd never needed to ask permission in any room she entered. Except perhaps this one. Her voice came then, soft as a secret carried on the cosmic winds, a whisper that crept under his skin and made his heart skitter like a nervous starship. "You belong to me." Jonas swallowed, half expecting the universe to collapse into some cosmic joke he wasn't prepared for. "Well," he croaked, "if I had a credit for every time a galactic queen dropped by my room unannounced, I'd probably be able to afford a one-way ticket back to Earth by now." His voice cracked at the end, betraying more nervousness than confidence. She didn't laugh, not immediately. Instead, her eyes glimmered with amusement, or maybe the endless patience of someone who had heard every bad joke in the galaxy before breakfast. "I thought you might appreciate a little excitement in your otherwise dull existence," she said, her tone light but with an edge that reminded him she was not to be trifled with. "Besides, the political climate out here is as charming as a neutron star's cuddle. I thought you could use a distraction." Jonas blinked at the metaphor, picturing a neutron star giving warm hugs and immediately shaking his head. "Yeah, because when I think of distractions, I think of regal visitors with long ears and more power than a fleet of warships," he said, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. "You know, normal Tuesday stuff." Her lips curled into a faint smile, and for a moment the weight of her crown seemed to lift, replaced by something more mischievous. "Normal is overrated," she said. "Besides, I'm here to make sure you remember who you belong to. It's not just politics anymore, soldier. Something else is stirring." Jonas ran a hand through his hair, feeling the weird mix of dread and curiosity twisting inside him. "Great. Just what I needed. Galactic drama with a side of existential crisis. Did you bring snacks at least? I'm warning you, I'm a terrible host, but I make a mean cup of synth coffee." The queen laughed then, a sound that was unexpectedly warm and human, even if it carried an alien cadence. Her long ears twitched in amusement as she straightened, the room suddenly feeling smaller with her presence. "No snacks," she admitted, "but I promise the company will keep you awake better than any energy drink." Jonas groaned, rolling onto his back. "You really know how to make a guy feel special." She knelt again, closer this time, and for a fleeting moment, the vast gulf between alien queen and weary soldier seemed to vanish into the quiet space between them. "We don't have the luxury of time," she whispered, voice low and urgent. "The peace we've brokered is fragile, and there are those who would see it shattered. But tonight, I'm not here as a queen or a ruler. I'm here because you're the one who can understand what's at stake." Jonas stared at the ceiling, the weight of the moment settling like dust on his ribs. "I'm not sure I understand half the things going on out here," he said honestly. "I'm just a guy trying to survive in a galaxy that seems to have forgotten him." Her fingers brushed his hand lightly, a touch so unexpected and human that it caught him off guard. "Maybe that's why you matter more than you know." Jonas let out a shaky laugh, shaking his head as if to clear the surreal fog. You're full of surprises, Queenie. Long ears and royal whispers aside, I didn't think I'd ever have to deal with interstellar romance before my morning briefing. She smiled, eyes shining with something close to hope. Or was it mischief? Romance is a luxury for those who survive the wars, she said. Consider this your initiation. Jonas raised an eyebrow. Initiation? You mean there's a secret alien handshake, or do I have to learn how to moonwalk across zero gravity? The Queen's laughter echoed softly, filling the room with a strange warmth. Just keep your eyes open and your heart ready. The galaxy has a way of surprising us all. Outside, the stars blinked, indifferent and eternal. Inside, a soldier and a queen began a fragile dance of trust, defying the vast loneliness of space with whispered promises and stolen moments. And somewhere in the back of Jonas's mind, beneath the humor and the disbelief, a small, stubborn hope took root that maybe, just maybe, belonging to someone could mean something more than chains or duty. Maybe it could mean freedom. Jonas woke to a strange sensation, like his mind had been stirred by a dream half remembered, or maybe a whisper caught just on the edge of sleep. His body felt heavier than usual, as if the gravity in his quarters had shifted just enough to remind him that space was still a fickle master. Blinking against the artificial light, he found himself staring at the ceiling panel where the faint hum of the station systems thrummed in steady rhythm. But something else lingered in the air, an intangible charge that made his skin prickle like static on a cold morning back on Earth. He sat up abruptly, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, only to realize that the Queen was already there, waiting by the viewport, her silhouette outlined by the faint glow of distant stars and the cold blue light of the station's control panels. Her long ears twitched slightly, betraying a subtle impatience that somehow made her look less like a cosmic monarch and more like a kid who had stayed up too late playing with forbidden gadgets. "Good morning," she said, voice laced with amusement. "I see you've discovered the joys of interrupted sleep." Jonas rubbed his neck, wincing. "You could have at least left a note. Dear Jonas, hope you're enjoying your nap. Love, the alien queen." He smirked, though the weariness in his voice was unmistakable. "Is this your way of making sure I'm fully awake for the grand interstellar war meetings? Or do you have another midnight surprise plan?" She stepped closer, her eyes gleaming with a secret she wasn't ready to share just yet. "I thought we could talk about what's coming, about the complexity of our situation." Jonas scoffed softly. "Complexity is putting it mildly. Half the time I don't know if I'm negotiating peace or trying to untangle a knotted ball of quantum spaghetti." Her smile deepened, amused by his metaphors despite the gravity of their circumstances. "You're learning fast. That's good." She reached out, tapping a small device on the wall that blinked to life, projecting a hologram between them. Stars, planets, and lines of glowing data twisted and shifted in the air, a living map of their tenuous alliance. Jonas leaned forward, squinting at the swirling colors. "So this is the big picture, huh? Looks like a cosmic spaghetti junction, all right. And we're supposed to keep this mess from turning into a supernova explosion. The factions are restless," she said quietly, her fingers tracing an invisible path through the stars. "There are those who distrust peace, those who would rather see us all tear each other apart than share the same sky." Jonas let out a long breath, trying to mask the surge of frustration building in his chest. "Tell me about it." "Back on Earth, they say peace is the end goal. Out here, it's like trying to keep a hyperdrive engine from overheating while someone's throwing rocks at it." She laughed softly, a sound that was both foreign and familiar, echoing in the small room like a melody from some distant past. "You have a way with words, soldier. I might need to recruit you as my official spokesperson." He raised an eyebrow, mock offended. "Official spokesperson? So what? I get a shiny badge and a lifetime supply of synth coffee?" Her eyes twinkled. "And maybe a crown someday, though I suspect you'd make a terrible queen." "Hey, I could probably pull off a decent crown," he said with a grin, "as long as it comes with a manual on how to avoid intergalactic crises." The Queen's expression softened, the weight of leadership slipping away for a moment as she regarded him with something akin to fondness. "Sometimes I envy you, Jonas. Your world may be fraught with danger, but your perspective, it's refreshingly grounded." He laughed, shaking his head. Grounded, huh? Tell that to the last asteroid that nearly turned my ship into cosmic debris. They fell into a companionable silence, the hum of the station and the distant pulse of stars filling the space between them. Then she spoke again, voice low and urgent. There's more at stake than just politics. The bond between us, unexpected as it is, may be the key to holding everything together. Jonas swallowed hard, feeling the absurdity of it all settle in his chest like a stubborn star. You mean us? Like me and you? She nodded, long ears twitching with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Yes, you and me. In a galaxy where alliances shift like nebulae, trust is the rarest commodity. He let out a dry chuckle. Trust? Between a soldier and an alien queen? Sounds like the plot of a bad holovid. Maybe, she admitted, but sometimes the best stories come from the most unlikely beginnings. Jonas ran a hand through his hair, thinking of the countless nights spent staring at the cold void, wondering if there was any meaning left to hold on to. So what's the plan? Save the galaxy one awkward conversation at a time? She smiled, the kind of smile that held a universe of possibilities and whispered promises. Something like that. As the station creaked around them, the weight of the cosmos pressing in, Jonas realized that this strange alliance, born of politics but blossoming into something more, was no longer just a duty. It was a fragile spark in the darkness, a flicker of hope that maybe, in the vastness of space, two unlikely souls could find something worth fighting for. The alarms weren't supposed to go off at 2 a.m. on a peacekeeping station. Jonas had learned that much. And yet here he was, blinking bleary-eyed beneath the harsh glow of emergency lights that painted the walls a frantic red, while the station's artificial gravity wobbled like a drunk trying to find balance. Somewhere in the middle of the chaos, the Queen's voice crackled through his comm link, calm and almost mischievous, as if the galaxy's impending doom were merely a mild inconvenience to her royal schedule. Enjoying your wake-up call, soldier? Jonas grunted, fumbling to secure his blaster to his side. Could have gone with coffee, but sure, wake me when we're not about to become cosmic dust. The station trembled again. Sensors blared warnings about a sabotage attempt, their fragile peace hanging by threads thinner than a quantum filament. Jonas cursed under his breath. Saboteurs. Figures. Nothing says, let's keep the peace, like trying to blow up the place. Relax, the Queen replied, her long ears twitching as if she found his grumbling endearing. I've got this. That this turned out to be an array of unexpected brilliance and some questionable holographic illusions. While Jonas was busy diving through corridors, blaster in hand, she orchestrated a dance of deception, cloaking critical systems in shifting light patterns that confused their attackers into thinking the station was abandoned. It was like watching a maestro conducting a symphony composed of lasers and quantum codes, all while throwing in sarcastic commentary over the comm about how sabotage was so last millennium. When Jonas finally cornered the saboteurs, who incidentally looked less like hardened terrorists and more like disgruntled diplomats wielding laser screwdrivers, he couldn't help but quip, "You're about as subtle as a supernova in a blackout." One of them shot back with a sarcastic remark about soldiers having bad timing, which Jonas filed under enemy wit. In the end, the threat was neutralized not just by firepower, but by the unexpected alliance between soldier and queen, each playing off the other's strengths. The Queen's tactical genius combined with Jonas's boots-on-the-ground grit proved an unbeatable combination. As the station settled back into its usual hum, Jonas found himself leaning against a bulkhead, heart still racing, and the Queen appeared beside him, a sly grin curving her lips. Well, that was fun. I haven't had this much excitement since the last intergalactic tea party. Jonas chuckled, shaking his head. You know, for someone who claims to be a galactic ruler, you sure know how to keep things interesting. Her eyes softened, long ears folding slightly as she regarded him with an expression that was no longer just royal command, but something warmer, something personal. Jonas, this journey, our journey, has changed me, not just as a queen, but as someone who never imagined she could find belonging. He looked at her, the woman whose long ears marked her as alien, yet whose presence had become the anchor in his vast, uncertain universe. I guess we both learned something. You taught me that power isn't just about crowns and fleets. It's about connection. And I learned that even in the coldest reaches of space, you can find warmth in the most unexpected places. She smiled, brushing a stray lock of black hair behind her ear. So, what now? Do we go back to endless politics and awkward alliances? Jonas shook his head, a mischievous glint lighting his eyes. Nah, I think we take this show on the road. Maybe start with a holiday on Earth, assuming it hasn't been turned into a radioactive wasteland by then. Her laughter was genuine, ringing through the quiet corridors like a promise. I'd like that, and maybe next time, you won't greet me with a blaster. He grinned. No promises. Old habits die hard. As the distant stars twinkled through the viewport, indifferent yet eternal, Jonas realized that his life, once defined by duty and loneliness, had transformed. He belonged not just to a queen or a cause, but to something deeper, the fragile, unpredictable tapestry of trust and hope woven between two unlikely souls adrift in the cosmos. The galaxy was vast and often unforgiving, but together they had found a spark that could light even the darkest void. And as the station's systems hummed softly, carrying them forward into whatever future awaited, Jonas understood that sometimes the greatest victory was simply belonging to another, to a purpose, to the extraordinary adventure called life. Branches lashed against her arms as she ran, slicing shallow lines across her blue-tinged skin. Rayleigh didn't feel them anymore. The pounding of her boots over root and gravel was the only rhythm keeping her steady, and even that threatened to falter with each breath. Her armor suit chimed warning tones in her ear. Dehydration, stress, microfracture on the right greave, oxygen dip, but she silenced them all with a twitch of her finger. The Calreth weren't the sort to wait for technical diagnostics. They were coming, and she was still very much catchable. Something cracked behind her, not a twig, something heavier. She ducked, veered left through a curtain of mist, nearly slipping on the moss-slick surface of an old comms panel that jutted from the forest floor like a rusted tombstone. This place had been abandoned for decades. That was the plan. Run where even scavengers didn't bother to check. She'd hoped the wilds of Raylon Delta's ghost sector would swallow her whole. Instead, they spat up a starship. It stood awkwardly between two collapsed towers, its plating dull with corrosion and half swallowed by moss and root. A Terran design, unmistakably ugly, boxy, over-engineered, proud in its clunkiness. Its name was faded, but the letters PEREGRINEDRIFT still ghosted across the hull like a half-remembered whisper. She didn't hesitate. The airlock groaned at her approach, as if surprised to be touched again. A faint hiss, a flicker of old systems spinning up, and the hatch shuddered open. The interior smelled of old polymers, cold metal, and dust that hadn't moved in years. She stepped inside and felt for the first time in hours the faint illusion of safety. Then a voice said, "If you're here to kill me, could you at least do it after I finish realigning the coffee dispenser?" She turned sharply. Across the corridor, half submerged in a maintenance panel, was a man. Human, blonde, grease-streaked, holding what looked suspiciously like half of a coffee maker fused to a screwdriver. They stared at each other for a second longer than logic permitted. He cleared his throat. "Or we could pretend I didn't say that and start over. Hi, I'm Kellen, and you are very armed." She didn't lower her weapon. "You live here?" "No, I'm haunting it. Boo." He waved his tool for emphasis. "But yes, I live here. Kind of. Sort of. It's a fixer-upper." A dull thud shook the ground beneath them. Rayleigh's eyes snapped to the ceiling, then to the corridors branching behind her. "Someone following you?" Kellen asked, not unkindly. "Because that sounded like a someone is following you kind of sound." She stepped past him without answering, weapon raised, scanning the chamber. The ship's systems were alive but flickering. Old AI lines sputtered in the background, failed subroutines muttering like ghosts. The mainframe blinked erratically. Kellen trailed her. "You know, if you're trying to impress me, breaking and entering while being chased by what I assume are murdery types is working surprisingly well." "Shut up," she muttered, reaching a terminal. Her fingers danced across it. The interface lagged, then flared to life. She muttered a phrase in Northiliari. The ship's AI pinged with a synthetic cough. "Hello again, sweet Oblivion," it said with startling clarity. "SAM online. What fresh disappointment awakens me now?" Kellen winced. "Ah, yeah, forgot to mention. The AI's dramatic." "It's corrupted," Rayleigh observed, scanning code strings that looked more like poetry than protocol. "You installed a theatrical overlay?" "No, that's just how it woke up. It thinks it's an actor. I think it's having an identity crisis. The toaster also recites Shakespeare." Another rumble outside. She turned. "How fast can this thing take off?" Kellen's eyebrows rose. "You're kidding. You want to fly this thing?" She looked at him flatly. "Well," he said, already turning toward the cockpit, "I always wanted to explode in a magnificent fireball. Guess today's my lucky day." They stumbled into the bridge, Rayleigh navigating instinctively, flipping switches she shouldn't have known existed. The controls hummed beneath her hands like old friends waking up from a long dream. She didn't question it. The Calreth were closing in. She could feel their psychic trace like a pressure in her skull. Kellen buckled into the pilot's chair with a grunt. "You know how to fly this thing?" "No." "Fantastic. I'll scream something heroic before we die." She sat beside him, pulling up the nav array. "If you scream, I'll eject your seat." He grinned. "Already love this partnership." The engines groaned as they cycled up, each system struggling through years of disuse and creative rewiring. Lights flickered. Gravity spasmed. The ship lurched free of its mossy cradle like a beast rising from hibernation. "Someone once told me," Kellen said over the din, "that I had a knack for attracting trouble. I thought they meant romantically, but I think they just meant I was doomed." "Shut up and fly." "I thought you were flying." The ship rocketed forward, scraping past branches, shattering through vines and launching them into the ashen skies above Raylan Delta. Alarms screamed. SAM recited part of Macbeth. A targeting lock chirped somewhere in the distance. Rayleigh didn't breathe until they broke through the clouds. The sky opened wide, revealing the shattered ring of satellites that once defended this sector. Beyond them, space beckoned, cold, silent, full of places to hide. Kellen slumped in his seat. "Well, that was terrifying. Want to do it again next Tuesday?" She glanced at him, unsure whether to laugh or knock him unconscious. Instead, she said, "You should know. They'll come after this ship now. You're involved." "Was that your way of saying thank you? Because it needs work." She didn't smile, but the tension in her shoulders eased just slightly. Somewhere in the dark corners of the ship, something hummed in response. A system that shouldn't have been active, a signal that hadn't pulsed in centuries. Neither of them noticed. Gravity pulsed weirdly for the third time in under an hour, which Rayleigh interpreted as either a serious mechanical flaw or an attempt by the ship to imitate interpretive dance. She gritted her teeth as the floor pitched sideways, the overhead lights flickered like drunk fireflies, and a low moan came from the reactor bay that sounded disturbingly like someone sighing after eating a bad sandwich. Kellen stumbled through the corridor behind her, arms flailing. "Fun fact, your internal organs should never feel like they're in a lava lamp. Just learn that." "Your ship is falling apart," Rayleigh muttered, one hand bracing against the wall. Kellen's voice came closer. "Correction, my ship is holding together out of pure spite, which makes it perfect for me." They entered the engineering bay. Pipes hissed. Something sparked and hissed in a corner, where SAM had decided to construct what it called an aesthetic plasma sculpture, and Kellen called a death trap. With lights, Rayleigh ignored it. She had more pressing matters, like the knot of heat in her chest that had been pulsing ever since the jump. She reached under her armor and pressed her palm against the skin above her heart. It wasn't pain, not exactly. It was like a beacon humming through her bloodstream, ancient, familiar, and getting stronger. Kellen crouched beside a terminal, poking at it with the same tool he'd earlier tried to use as a weapon. "So, I have good news and bad news. Which do you want first?" "Neither." "That's fair. So the good news is the stabilizers are still functioning. The bad news is the stabilizers are functioning barely, and the ship's about one sarcastic comment away from turning us into a smear of ions." I thought you said it could fly. I said it did fly. Slight distinction. Sort of like saying a sandwich was edible before you dropped it into a wormhole. She knelt by the ship's power core. The metal panel beneath her hand felt wrong. Too warm. She peeled it back and exposed the crystalline core chamber. What she saw made her freeze. There was Sevillari tech woven into it. No human vessel should have that. No Terran-designed Yunker should have a Sevillari interface glowing beneath its plating like a buried memory. The blue lines pulsed in the rhythm of her own heartbeat. Kellen looked over. Why are you frowning like you just realized the soup is sentient? This tech, it's not from your people. Nope, that was already in the ship when I found it. Most of the systems didn't even want to work until I accidentally rerouted power using a music player and a broken toothbrush. Pretty standard engineering, really. She leaned closer. Symbols etched into the interface shimmered faintly. Old Ortheliari, but older still, buried under dialects even the elders had forgotten. She shouldn't be able to read them, and yet one phrase lit up clearly when her fingers brushed it. Legacy thread detected. Kellen whistled. Ominous, glowing script. Always a good sign. She stood. This ship's not just a derelict. It's a carrier for something else. Something ancient. Ancient like valuable or ancient like cursed? She didn't answer. The beacon in her chest pulsed again. The moment she touched the interface, it had strengthened, as if the ship were alive, and it recognized her. Okay, that's unsettling, Kellen said, watching her closely. You're glowing a little. Is that a normal thing for your people, or? It's not normal. Great. Unprecedented glowing. That's never ended badly in any story ever. She moved past him, heading toward the archives. Her boots thudded softly against the floor, which had finally stopped trying to twist sideways. Where's your data storage? Back corridor, third door on the right. Watch out for the thing in the vents. I think it's either a rat or a sentient hairball. You have vermin? Hard to say. I've only seen it twice. Once it hissed at me and stole a sock. She shot him a flat look over her shoulder. What? It was a nice sock. The archives were cluttered, unkempt, and smelled faintly of old toast. Kellen's filing system appeared to involve stacking data crystals in cups and labeling folders by how much they annoyed him. Rayleigh found the terminal and keyed in commands. She sifted through logs. Most were mundane. Salvage reports, power stats, and one incident where Kellen tried to cook something called egg spaghetti and had to jettison the kitchen module. But then she found it, buried deep. A signal received 12 years ago, encrypted, old Ortheliari code. She cracked it easily. It was a location, a map fragment, overlaid with a glyph she hadn't seen since childhood. The symbol of the Echo Seed, a myth, a weapon, a legacy, supposedly wiped out in the final cycle of the Sevillari collapse. She sat back. Her breath shook. Kellen peeked into the room. You get quiet when you're about to say something dramatic. I'm bracing myself. This ship received a Sevillari signal. A map? A treasure map? He looked far too excited. Please say it leads to something fun, or at least something with less mold. It leads to a graveyard or a birthplace. I don't know which. Kellen blinked. Those are two very different things. Not to my people. She stood. The ship creaked again, but this time it felt less like strain and more like tension, as though it too were waking up to its own purpose. Something about Rayleigh had triggered a cascade. She knew now that she hadn't stumbled here by accident. The ship had called her, or she had been guided to it. Kellen scratched the back of his head. So, what? We follow this map and find whatever buried cosmic riddle your ancestors left behind? Maybe get chased by more bounty hunters and possibly that sock-eating vent creature? If we do nothing, the Calreth will find it first. They're not just hunting me. They want what I carry. And what is that exactly? She met his eyes. I don't know. He nodded slowly. Well, that's comforting. She turned to leave. He followed. As they moved through the corridor, the lights ahead flicked on before they reached them. Rayleigh didn't say anything, but her hand stayed near her weapon. Just putting this out there, Kellen added casually. If we're now part of some intergalactic mystery destiny plotline, I'm going to need at least better boots. Maybe a jacket with cool stripes. You're already annoying. That's all the flair you need. Rude. The ship adjusted course. Rayleigh hadn't touched the helm. Neither had Kellen. Somewhere deep in the bowels of the Peregrine Drift, the ancient system hummed with purpose, waking dormant layers of code that had not spoken for millennia. The stars outside shifted, and the path ahead glowed faintly, waiting. The storm hit them in open space, not with thunder or lightning, but with a digital scream that tore through their sensors and rattled the ship like it had something to say and didn't care if it broke a few bones making its point. Lights flared red. The ship's AI muttered something unintelligible in Old Orthelieri before rebooting itself with a disgruntled beep. Rayleigh clung to the control panel while Kellen swore and slapped buttons like he was playing an angry arcade game. I thought you said we were going around the interference field. I tried to go around it, but the ship has other opinions. Very opinionated ship, by the way. Reminds me of my Aunt Nora. Loud, erratic, and suspiciously fond of old music. Focus! Rayleigh shouted as the hull groaned under the pressure of a subspace surge that licked at the shields like static fire. He gave her a sheepish grin. Good news. I think we're close. Bad news, we might arrive in pieces, possibly steaming. The coordinates had led them here, deep into the Talvaran Drift, a chaotic belt of fragmented moons and buried wreckage, where only scavengers and fools dared venture, which in Kellen's words made them overqualified. The signal guiding them had grown stronger, clearer, and in the last hour had begun to sing, not in sound, but in memory. Rayleigh could feel it in her bones. When the storm cleared, the space beyond it was eerily calm. A single structure floated among the wreckage, a massive crystalline sphere cracked with age and glowing with pale light. Glyphs shimmered across its surface. The moment Rayleigh saw it, the beacon inside her heart quieted. Not stopped, settled, like a child who'd finally found its way home. That's it, she said, voice hushed. Kellen stared. Please tell me it's not alive. It's not alive, she said, uncertain. Cool. That's what people always say right before the giant space orb grows teeth. The ship docked with a slow, mechanical sigh. The airlock hissed open. Inside the structure was silence, deep and reverent. They stepped into a corridor lit by shifting light that seemed to flow along the walls. Rayleigh's steps echoed as if time itself paused to listen. Symbols on the walls began to glow as she passed. Kellen reached out and tapped one. It zapped him gently. Ow. Okay, fine. No touching. Lesson learned. This is a vault, she murmured. A memory archive. Sebelari legacies were stored in these. Not just data, but experience, emotion, whole identities. Kellen blinked. So, you're walking into a library of ghosts? More like echoes. My people believed memory could guide future bloodlines, that our ancestors would shape our decisions if we let them. He grinned. That explains your dramatic flair. Genetics deeper in, they reached a chamber with a central pedestal. Floating above it was a prism, humming with power. Rayleigh approached it slowly. Her hand hovered near the surface. Are you sure this is safe? Kellen asked. No. Okay, just checking. You're glowing again, by the way. She touched the prism. There was no explosion, no blinding light, just a feeling, like falling through herself. Memories surged. She saw cities made of glass and stone, battles fought in silence, stars wept over, oaths made and broken. She saw a child, herself, running through moonlit fields. And then, she saw the origin, the seed. A long-forgotten truth rose in her. She wasn't just a refugee, she was a bearer. The last descendant of the Echo seed, a lineage created not for conquest, but for remembering. The weapon they feared wasn't destruction, it was knowledge. When she opened her eyes, Kellen was holding a wrench like it might help fight metaphysical concepts. I think I remember everything, she whispered. Good, because I'm out of metaphors and snacks. They returned to the ship. The vault dimmed behind them. In the quiet hum of the engine room, Rayleigh transmitted the stored knowledge across encrypted Sebelari channels. echoes that would find dormant seeds scattered across the galaxy. Her people weren't extinct. They were sleeping. Kellen leaned against the console. So, you're basically royalty now, galactic librarian princess with trauma and a glowing chest. Kind of jealous. She smiled. I was hunted because they thought I'd destroy something. But it was never about ending anything. It was about remembering what came before, so we wouldn't repeat it. He scratched his chin. Deep. Also, slightly disappointing. I was hoping for a dramatic final battle. Maybe with laser swords. They still might come. The Calreth won't stop. But now we have allies. And understanding. And snacks. I restocked the galley. She glanced at him. Thank you. He tilted his head. For the snacks? For everything. The ship drifted away from the vault. Behind them, the storm began to fade. Ahead, space stretched wide and dark and full of stars that no longer felt so distant. Rayleigh stood at the viewport, her long ears twitching slightly at the sounds of the ship around her. Her armor bore new marks, symbols glowing faintly with knowledge now rekindled. Kellen flopped into the pilot's seat. Where to now, Echo Lady? She looked over her shoulder, eyes calm. Wherever memory needs us. He grinned. Please not the desert planet. Sand does terrible things to my hair. The ship jumped into the black, leaving behind the ruins of a forgotten war and carrying forward something far older. A promise reborn. Elias Rowe squinted through the shuttle window at the terrain below, a reddish sprawl of shattered hills and regrown forests that looked like someone had tried to terraform a war zone with optimism and ran out halfway through. The planet Velmara was recovering, but not gracefully. From orbit, the landmass resembled a fractured circuit board. Rivers glinted like solder trails and whole cities pulsed beneath domes, half technological marvel, half bubble wrap for civilization. He rubbed his temple. Diplomatic missions weren't supposed to involve potential assassination attempts, last-minute uniform tailoring, or formal addresses with more syllables than heartbeats. Yet here he was, strapped into a trembling, elderly drop shuttle called the Limping Swan, preparing to touch down on a world where peace was technically in place, but only in the same way a ceiling tile stays in place during a small earthquake. The ship jolted. Elias's stomach lurched upward like it was trying to escape out his mouth. Altitude drop initiated, came the pilot's voice, far too calm for a maneuver that felt like falling off a space ladder drunk. Please remain seated, and try not to scream this time, Commander Rowe. I wasn't screaming, Elias muttered. I was expressing intense diplomatic concern. Sounded like a goat being vacuumed. Diplomatic goat, he corrected. You'd know the sound if you'd served in the Bovinar peace trials. The pilot snorted, and the shuttle thudded into the Velmaron landing field with a groan that suggested something inside had dislodged. Perhaps a panel, perhaps an organ. Elias unstrapped, stood, and immediately knocked his head against the overhead interface. The welcome mat of interstellar diplomacy, he thought, pain and mild embarrassment. He emerged into light that had a slightly pink hue, filtered through the planet's thick but breathable atmosphere. A group of armored figures stood nearby, their long shadows slicing the sand. At the front was a woman who didn't move, didn't shift, didn't blink, just stared at him. She was tall, clad in segmented armor with navy accents, silver gauntlets gleaming in the pale sunlight. Her black hair was tied in a series of intricate braids that wrapped like a crown down her spine, and her ears, long and elegant, tilted forward slightly, as if straining towards something just out of hearing. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a flicker, barely a twitch in the corner of her mouth. Ellis stepped forward, resisting the urge to fix his collar. Commander Elias Rowe, Earth Delegation, he announced, forcing his voice to sound more like a statesman and less like someone who recently lost a battle with a seatbelt. The woman tilted her head. You've aged. Elias blinked. Yes? I'm told it's a side effect of being alive. She walked toward him slowly. You are not as I remembered. That's diplomatic, for your face looks like a used boot. Fair enough. He offered a crooked smile. And you are? She stared at him a heartbeat longer, then finally replied, Commander Thalia of Velmara. Her voice was smooth, clipped at the edges. I am to be your liaison, escort, and possibly, depending on how the week goes, You're arresting officer. Great, Elias said. That's exactly the kind of warm welcome I read about in the travel pamphlet. Come to Velmara, where your chances of imprisonment are slightly lower than being offered tea. One of the guards behind Thalia coughed into a gloved fist. She ignored it, already turning on her heel. Come, your accommodations await. The walk to the city's edge took them along a glass-covered path winding through scarred stone and sprouting grass. Beneath the surface, neural filaments pulsed faintly, carrying data and energy, like the planet's nervous system rebuilding itself, strand by glowing strand. They passed war statues, holograms flickering in and out of old combat poses. One kept freezing mid-heroic leap with a stupid expression that Elias recognized instantly as someone trying to hold in a sneeze. Are all your monuments programmed for interpretive comedy? He asked. Thalia didn't answer, but he caught the faintest twitch at the corner of her mouth. Inside the diplomatic housing dome, a robot butler with too many arms offered Elias a tray of snacks that looked suspiciously alive. He picked something small and purple that hissed at him. Thalia arched an eyebrow. They're traditional, she said. So was bloodletting, he replied, delicately setting the snack back. And yet here we are. Over the next hour, introductions were made, protocols were signed, and Elias gave a brief speech about peace and unity that was met with polite applause and at least 2 visible yawns. Thalia stood to the side the whole time, silent, arms folded, watching him like a puzzle missing its last piece. When the session ended, she approached him again. I would speak with you, she said, privately. Elias gestured toward a quiet corridor. Only if I'm not about to be locked in a very polite interrogation chamber. No, she said, not polite. They walked a while in silence. The hallway curved and twisted like it couldn't make up its mind, lights humming overhead with that unmistakable bureaucratic flicker. Just enough to irritate the eyes, never enough to justify maintenance. When she finally stopped, they stood in a small observatory overlooking the rebuilt skyline. Spires, domes, and aerial gardens rising like coral out of old ash. Thalia turned to face him, her face unreadable again, but this time her voice was softer. Do you remember the city of Varn? She asked. 15 years ago. It burned. There was a raid. You were there. Elias frowned. I was a soldier then. There were a lot of cities, a lot of raids. There was a girl, she said, eyes narrowing, trapped beneath a drone wreck. A human boy pulled her free. He was limping, bloodied. She remembered his face. Something stirred behind Elias's ribs like a hand tapping on the underside of memory. He looked at her, really looked, and the years folded inward, the smoke, the broken scaffold, a hand small and shaking, reaching up through sparks. You were... She stepped closer. Is that you? She asked quietly. You were my hero who saved me as a child. I remember... Elias opened his mouth, closed it again, then said, well, that explains the mysterious, emotional staring. I thought maybe I'd insulted your fashion sense. And for the first time, she smiled. It was a small thing, half hidden, but it changed her entire face. Still flippant. Still alive. A pause. For now, she said, you haven't tasted breakfast yet. The rain on Velmara didn't fall. It hovered. Micro droplets suspended in slow orbit, stirred only by motion and thoughtless gestures. Elias watched them swirl as he followed Thalia down a corridor, whose walls shimmered faintly with embedded bioluminescence. An aesthetic, she explained earlier, that discouraged depression and espionage equally. He wasn't sure if that was a joke. Velmaran humor was dry in the way desserts aspired to be. She hadn't spoken much since the observatory. Her face was carved into neutrality, but Elias could feel the tension humming around her like a barely audible frequency. Something had shifted, not in a dangerous way, no alarms or poisoned hors d'oeuvres, but in the deep, unnerving way a floor might tilt just enough to suggest there was something beneath it. He decided to test the gravity. So, he said, hands clasped behind his back, you remembered me all these years. I can't even remember what I had for breakfast. You didn't have breakfast, Thalia replied. Exactly. See? The mind is a sieve, and possibly on strike. Her gaze flicked sideways, unimpressed. You were hard to forget. I did have spectacular hair back then. It was filthy. Ah, he said. So it was memorable. They entered what looked like a war room but smelled faintly of citrus and damp leather. Hollow screens floated in the air, each displaying maps, troop locations, weather patterns, and at least one suspiciously detailed GIF of a cat attempting to operate a railgun. Thalia made a gesture, and the display swirled into a cohesive projection of the planet's southern hemisphere. She didn't speak for a moment, just stared at the image. Elias, sensing the mood again slipping toward grim, reached for the nearest touch interface and accidentally opened a training sim labeled Interrogation Techniques for Difficult Diplomats. I wasn't trying to make a point, he said quickly, swiping it away. Clearly, she murmured, that module includes throwing chairs. I've seen it done, mostly by retired admirals with strong opinions about tea temperature. She finally looked at him, her expression softer now, though still unreadable. When I was young, I used to think of you as something fictional, like a story implanted by trauma. The brave boy who pulled me from the wreckage, then vanished. I imagined you with a laser sword. I had a stick, Elias said. A broken plasma conduit, actually. Burned my hand pretty bad. She blinked. You still saved me. I didn't know what else to do. Everything was on fire. You were the only thing not actively trying to explode. There was a pause, a kind of quiet that had nothing to do with awkwardness and everything to do with two timelines brushing against each other, uncertain if they should entwine or retreat. I always wondered, she said, if you survived. I never knew your name. Well, Elias replied, I'd say I made it out in one piece, but I've got 3 artificial ribs and a left knee that screams during planetary rotation. Her lips quirked again. So, a hero and a weather sensor. I contain multitudes. They stood in silence again, this time more companionable. Elias found himself studying the map, trying to make sense of the color coding. Velmoran's strategic interfaces were notoriously abstract. He once mistook a heat map for a fruit basket chart and complimented a general on his fine agricultural exports. Is something wrong? He asked, pointing to a red crescent blinking near the southern border. Thalia nodded slowly. That region was a flashpoint during the last conflict, a stronghold for separatists. There's been activity. Not war, not yet, but heat signatures, unregistered communications. It may be nothing. And if it's not, then the treaty becomes a funeral invitation. Elias rubbed the back of his neck. Would now be a good time to mention that I'm technically just here to smile and pretend to understand the cultural significance of rotating chairs? I won't ask you to fight. Good, he said, because my laser sword's in the shop. She turned toward him fully, expression unreadable again. I don't expect anything from you. I only wanted you to know who you were. To me. Elias didn't have a response to that, at least not one that didn't sound either flippant or embarrassingly sincere. He settled for a nod, and after a moment, she let him out. Later that night, he found himself alone in his quarters, sipping something local and vaguely fruity from a thermos shaped like a molecular replicator. The room was strange, designed for comfort, but with angles that defied logic. Typical Velmoran architecture. He'd almost grown used to the way it seemed to flex when he wasn't looking. His thoughts drifted to the past, the burning sky, the smell of ozone and melted circuits, that terrified girl beneath the wreckage. He hadn't remembered her face until today, but now it sat in his memory like a beacon. She had been so small, and now she could probably break his arms without breaking stride. He tapped the wall interface, scrolling idly through the local broadcasts. Most were in Velmoran, but a few had neural translation enabled. He settled on a comedy channel and was immediately bombarded by what appeared to be an alien talk show hosted by a sentient gelatin cube. The subtitles were 3 seconds late and translated one punchline as, I told the ambassador, that's not a photon converter, that's my grandmother, followed by audience screeches of delight. Elias smiled. Humor, he realized, might be the only language with worse translation settings than diplomacy. Just as the cube was preparing to introduce a guest shaped like a wind chime, the screen flickered. Briefly, not enough to cause alarm, but enough for a line of static text to flash at the bottom before vanishing. Xenovault breach registered. Level 3. Tracking suspended. He leaned forward. What the hell is a Xenovault? He muttered. The console refused to respond. The text was gone. A moment later, a polite chime rang through his room. A message. From Thalia. Meet me at the spire. Come armed. And try not to bring that hideous thermos. He sighed. This is going to involve explosions, isn't it? The thermos gurgled in agreement. The spire loomed above the city like a tuning fork abandoned by a god mid-symphony. It pulsed faintly with inner light, strands of alien code drifting like vapor along its surface. Elias stared up at it, resisting the urge to narrate his impending doom aloud. He figured if someone was going to be vaporized by a sentient building, best not to give it a one-man show beforehand. Thalia stood at the entrance, arms folded, helmet under one arm. Her armor looked sleeker now, reconfigured or perhaps upgraded since last they met, and she carried a rifle that hummed with a low vibration Elias could feel through the soles of his boots. He nodded toward the weapon. Expecting company. Uninvited guests, she said, with poor manners and worse timing. Ah, Elias replied, adjusting his jacket to hide the sidearm he'd borrowed from the diplomatic guard. My favorite kind. Do they also chew with their mouths open and talk during movies? She didn't smile this time, but her eyes flicked to him briefly with something close to amusement. Then she turned and led the way through the threshold, which opened not with a door, but a ripple in the very air, like stepping through a memory. Inside, the spire was stranger than Elias expected, and he had expected quite a lot. The walls were lined with slits of glowing glass that seemed to shift color depending on where he looked. Organic wiring crawled across the surfaces in slow, deliberate patterns. No doors, no guards. Just corridors that adjusted length as they walked, subtly reconfiguring behind them. This place isn't architecture, Elias said. It's dreaming. It's more than that, Thalia replied. The spire is ancient, older than our wars. Some say it was a vessel long ago. Others think it's a seed. A seed for what? Possibility. Of course, Elias muttered, because everything terrifying and mysterious needs to be vaguely philosophical. She led him deeper until they reached a chamber that pulsed with quiet energy. In the center floated a crystalline orb, rotating slowly, tethered by nothing. Around it, glyphs spun like a halo, each one alien, flickering between meanings as though unsure which language to settle on. This is the vault interface, Thalia said. The Xenavault is sealed beneath it. I saw a warning last night, Elias said. Something about a breach. Her expression sharpened. Then it's worse than I feared. The vault isn't just a relic. It's a prison. Elias stepped closer, careful not to trigger anything. Who or what is it holding? Thalia hesitated. A mind, non-corporeal, pre-war. It arrived here during the first scattering. Our ancestors couldn't destroy it, so they contained it, wrapped it in layers of thought and static and buried it here, in the one place even our enemies wouldn't dare to enter. And now something tripped the alarm. Something or someone, she said. There have been whispers among the separatists. Rumors about a catalyst, someone who could unlock the vault. Elias tilted his head. Wait, you think I'm... No, she said too quickly. But they might. There was a pause as he absorbed that. Then, that's extremely flattering, in a terrifying, potentially world-ending way. She touched the edge of the interface, and the orb responded, slowing its rotation, the glyphs drawing together to form a shape Elias couldn't quite comprehend. His head throbbed slightly just looking at it. The vault reacts to proximity, emotion, memory, she said. When I brought you here, I wanted to test a theory. You saved me once, when everything was chaos. I think that moment left a mark. You're saying I emotionally fingerprinted a galactic prison with a childhood rescue mission. Yes, now that's a resume item. Thalia reached into a side compartment on her armor and pulled out a thin device, half tablet, half relic, etched with more shifting glyphs. This can stabilize the interface long enough to get a reading, but it needs a dual resonance. He raised an eyebrow. You want me to touch the ancient brain orb with you? I do. Just making sure we're still in the science fiction part of the story. They stepped forward together, hands extended. As soon as their fingers brushed the orb's surface, the chamber changed. The air thickened, colors inverted, then returned. A sound rose from the floor, Not noise, but meaning, like a voice from a forgotten language speaking directly into their minds. Elias saw flashes, not memories, not exactly, but echoes. A burning city, a small girl crying beneath rubble, a boy lifting her, screams, silence, a hidden chamber, a door made of thought. Then, a whisper, not Thalia's, not his. You remember me? He staggered back. Thalia caught him. It spoke. I heard it too, she said, her voice tight. That means it's awake. The orb returned to its slow rotation, but the room no longer felt neutral. There was presence now, like something watching from just outside sight. We need to shut it down, Elias said. We can't, Thalia replied. Not unless we want to break the seal. The only way to stop it from waking fully is to trace the breach. Find the contact point. Someone has already interfaced with the vault. Great. So what you're saying is, we've got an ancient psychic entity trying to phone home, and someone's handing it a better data plan. She blinked. I don't know what that means. It means we're going to need backup, preferably someone without a nervous system. They left the spire under an amber sky. The rain still hung motionless above them, like time had decided to take a break. Elias looked up, then to Thalia. So what now? We track down whoever cracked the mental egg? She nodded, and hope we're not already too late. Behind them, unseen, the glyphs on the orb shifted again. This time, they spelled a name. His name. Elias had always found Velmaran cuisine to be suspiciously sentient. The way the food glistened and shifted slightly on the plate, as if deciding whether to be eaten or to file a complaint, made every meal feel like a minor diplomatic incident. He poked at a shimmering mound of blue, something with a utensil that might have also been a surgical instrument, then looked up at Thalia. I'm beginning to think this is your way of testing my bravery. It's called Cathari. The name translates roughly to nutrient cluster with opinions. It's hissing at me. That means it approves of your energy field. Oh, good, we're bonding. She didn't laugh, but the corner of her mouth quirked in the way he'd learned meant she was probably not annoyed. Probably. That was the best he could hope for with someone who considered silence a full spectrum of emotional expression. They were seated in a discreet dining alcove aboard her personal transport, a sleek serpentine vessel that barely registered on radar and smelled faintly of polished alloy and citrus smoke. They were en route to the low-orbit relay station, where the vault signal had first registered off-world interference. According to Thalia, the relay, Station Wraith 17, had gone dark 2 cycles ago. No warning, no distress call, just silence. In Velmaran military terms, that was akin to a thunderstorm politely not showing up for its own forecast. Elias took another bite of the food and regretted it instantly. This tastes like a battery acid smoothie wrapped in regret. Thalia took a clean, elegant bite of her own portion. It's an acquired taste. I'm acquiring trauma. She slid a data sheet across the table. On it glowed a topographic scan of Wraith 17, its thin rings orbiting the station's core like a skeletal halo. The energy signature matched the timestamp of the breach in the vault's containment. I still don't understand why my name was in that orb, Elias said, scrolling through the station's last known logs. I'm not psychic. I can barely play chess. You were exposed to vault resonance once, as a child, during the raid. That memory, it might have tethered something. Emotionally fingerprinting a prison and now tethered psychic residue. I swear, if this turns out to be some ancient prophecy where I'm the chosen idiot, I'm suing the universe. Thalia tilted her head. We don't believe in prophecy. Great. So I can just chalk this up to cosmic incompetence. She opened a secure channel and spoke into the air in sharp, clipped Velmaran. Elias caught a few words, mostly military codes and something that might have meant intermittent anomaly with possible psychological bleed. You know, he said, I once saw a man talk to his sandwich for 3 days straight because of psychological bleed. What did the sandwich say? Mostly critiques of his life choices. She finally laughed. It was soft, unexpected, and brief. Elias felt like he'd accidentally activated a rare achievement in a game he didn't know he was playing. They docked with Wraith 17 an hour later. The outer hull looked normal, if slightly scarred from micrometeor impacts. But the moment they stepped inside, the temperature dropped 10 degrees and the lights flickered with unsettling precision. Why is it always flickering? Elias whispered. Does evil need mood lighting? The station is powered by a harmonic core, Thalia said. If something disrupted it, a loud thud echoed through the corridor. Elias drew his sidearm. Disrupted like that? They moved carefully, Thalia in front with her rifle humming faintly, Elias behind her, making occasional unhelpful remarks like, I think I just heard a motivational poster cry. The command center was sealed. Thalia accessed the override, and the door slid open with a hiss that sounded far too dramatic for something supposedly automatic. Inside, they found the crew. Frozen, not dead, but locked in a stasis field of unknown origin. Each one suspended mid-motion, some seated, some standing, one unfortunate soul clearly caught mid-sneeze. Elias approached the nearest body, waving his hand in front of the frozen eyes. Any chance they're just really focused? Thalia scanned the field. No biological degradation. Pulse suspended. Neural activity minimal. This isn't stasis. It's suggestion. You're telling me someone suggested an entire crew stop what they were doing mid-sandwich? They've been overwritten, not by command, by thought. Elias slowly turned toward her. I suddenly miss the days when our enemies had guns instead of metaphysical PowerPoint presentations. She found the station's main terminal and initiated a systems check. The logs were corrupted, not erased, just scrambled in a way that suggested someone had given the data anxiety. One file remained intact, a video message, time-stamped minutes before the shutdown. Thalia played it. The screen flickered to life, revealing the face of a young Velmaran technician. He looked panicked, his long ears twitching violently, sweat glistening on his brow. It's here. It found us. The signal, it's inside the comm relays now. We tried to disconnect, but the screen cut to static, then, unexpectedly, resolved again. But it wasn't the technician. It was Elias, or at least a version of him. Same face, same uniform, but older. Eyes wrong, smiling like someone who'd never had a real reason to smile. Hello, Elias, the figure said. You left the door open. The screen went black. Elias sat very still. Okay, he said slowly. That was me. But not. Thalia's face had gone pale. It's copying. Not just minds, identities, memory structures. It's mimicking you. Why me? You were the first. A low hum began to build beneath their feet. Elias checked his wrist sensor. Thalia? I hear it. Please tell me this is just the station's way of saying welcome. She turned to him, her voice quiet. We need to go. As they ran back to the docking bay, the station shuddered. And somewhere, in the sound between sounds, Elias heard his own voice whisper. Is that you? The escape from Wraith 17 was not graceful. In fact, it involved 3 fire suppression drones, a malfunctioning hatch, and Elias yelling, I'm not a snack, at an automated defense turret. Thalia piloted with cool efficiency, but Elias could feel the tension in her silence. It was the kind of silence that suggested the situation had shifted from concerning to interstellar existential crisis with bonus identity theft. They didn't speak until they were halfway through the asteroid ring that shielded Velmaran's space from unwanted visitors and even more unwanted data entities. So, Elias said, wiping soot from his collar, I'm being impersonated by a psychic echo of myself that lives inside an alien prison. That about sum it up? It's not just impersonation, Thalia replied. It's evolution. It's learning from you. Right. So I'm basically raising a chaos god. I should have packed snacks. She turned from the controls, gaze sharp. It wants out. It used the signal breach as a test. Now it knows your neural pattern, your memory imprint. It's reconstructing your consciousness to unlock the vault's core layer. I didn't even give it permission to follow me on social media. The vault doesn't open with keys, she said. It opens with recognition. So what you're saying is, I'm a walking password. A password that cares, that saved a girl during a raid, that refused to shoot when others did, that remembers pain, but didn't become it. Now you're making me sound noble. You were 12, she said, voice softening, and you held my hand while the world burned. Elias looked at her. That's why you brought me here. She nodded. The vault reacts to emotion, memory. The moment you saved me, it left a scar on the psychic fabric of this world. The entity sensed it. It's using it to get out. Which means we go back to where it started. Not just the location, she said. The moment. She entered new coordinates. Not a base, not a stronghold. The valley, the one that had long since been reclaimed by Flora and forgotten by war. Where Thalia had once hidden under shattered metal, and Elias had crawled through fire and ash just to reach her. As they landed, the world around them shimmered with old ghosts. The ground was cracked but green. The air buzzed faintly with vault static. They walked in silence, until the air thickened. Then he appeared. Not Elias, but him, the mirror version, older, wrong. Hello again, it said, stepping from the shimmer. Or should I say goodbye? Thalia raised her rifle, but Elias held out his hand. Number, let me talk to me. The reflection smiled. Smart. After all, I know what you'll say. I doubt that, Elias said, because I barely know what I'm about to say. He stepped forward. The entity shifted slightly, flickering with overlapping timelines. You think I'm a copy, but I'm more. I'm the memory of you, the better version, without fear, without guilt, without limits. That's not better, Elias said. That's hollow. I remember what you did here, the entity said, gesturing around. You cried. You shook. You almost ran. You saved her. But you were afraid. I wouldn't have been. That fear is why I saved her, Elias said. It wasn't about glory. It was just about her not dying. That's what makes us human. The entity paused. Then its form flickered again. This time it looked like Thalia. Then the technician from Wraith 17. Then Elias's old squad leader. Faces, voices, memories. All stolen, all warped. Give me the code, it had said. Give me what I need, and I will be everything you never could. Elias looked to Thalia. She gave a tiny nod. He stepped forward, then whispered, No. The world shattered, or at least the illusion of it. The entity screamed, not in sound but in pressure, in psychic backlash. It lunged. Thalia was already moving. She activated the vault trigger, now embedded in her gauntlet. The air tore like cloth, and the vault responded. Not with violence, but with recognition. Images bloomed around them. The raid, the rescue, her small hand in his. The fire, the fear, the choice. The entity howled, not in rage, but in despair. It couldn't understand, because it had erased its fear, its empathy. It had erased her. The vault closed. A final pulse of energy rippled outward, and the copy, Elias's shadow, disintegrated like dust caught in reverse gravity. Then silence. No hum, no shimmer, just the breeze. Later aboard the ship, Thalia brought 2 mugs of steaming syntha root. Elias took one and stared out the viewport at the slowly turning planet below. So, do I get a medal, or at least a sticker? You get clearance access and 1 diplomatic override badge. Will it let me skip the line at the embassy cafeteria? No. Then it's a terrible badge. She smiled slightly. You did something most warriors wouldn't. I talked to my evil twin. You remembered why it mattered, she said. The moment, the choice. You didn't need prophecy or destiny. Elias sipped his drink. I'll be honest. I was hoping for a cool catchphrase. Something like, not today, thought Demon. But it came out more therapeutic. You're still annoying, she said, but you're my annoying. He looked over. That sounded dangerously sentimental. Don't ruin it. He grinned. So, what happens now? She set her mug down. Now. We patrol the outer rim, watch for anomalies, eat more nutrient sludge. And if the vault ever opens again? She raised an eyebrow. Then we send you in first. He lifted his mug in a mock toast. To terrifying memory prisons, shape-shifting psychic echoes, and the power of unresolved childhood trauma. To the hero I remember, she said. He blinked, then smiled. And somewhere deep in the vault beneath the surface, nothing stirred.